Hello, this is Brian Cochran of the Brian Cochran Show, and I'm so glad that you have tuned in today. There's something that's been close to my heart that I want to talk about and help us with nonprofits and churches and ministries that work with children and youth. And I've been helping doing church development now for, probably almost all my life. Anyway, parts of it, but then as a minister of the gospel, I've been for the past 20 plus years, I've been helping set up churches and talking to churches about how using youth and children's ministries as the development of a church and grow a church, as well as being a vital part of a community, providing the services that are needed in the community. And one of the things that I ran across, I'm working with a church right now called Pilgrim Congregational Church here in Pomona, and something came a letter came, and it, as the youth director and I were talking about it, she kind of shared it with me, and when she read it and said, wow, this is going to affect the church and something they had to jump on right away, and they did, and they are, and I said, let me share this information with my sphere of influence and people that I know that work in children's ministry, youth ministries, churches, and as well as other nonprofits, that there's some things that they need to know in order to grow. And so let's get into it. All right. There's a new California legislation law that just went into effect, and it's having to deal with the sexual abuse prevention and some things that have been going on because of Megan's Law and Murphy's, all these other different things that are out there. That one of the things, let me say this too before I get into it. One of my pet peeves has always been churches, telling churches that they need to come up with some type of, as you can see, I'm African American, and one of the things that happens is we're very trusting, and so I share this story a lot because it's happened in a ministry that I was working with, where the husband and wife were separated, and they separated because the father was an abuser. He physically abused his children. So the mother and the wife went to court and got a restraining order against their child. Against her husband. And so he no longer had access to their kids because he needed to go through a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't know the whole court case, and it doesn't matter. But one of the things that happened was she was going to church with her family, taking her kids to church. She would excuse the kids to go to children's church. And so during service, the husband came to church. Because they don't have an intake form, because they don't have a form that lets them know who was able to pick up the kids or not, when he walked into the room, the kids, even though they had been abused, still loved their dad. And so they went running up to their dad, and the father said, "Hey, I'm going to take my kids. Is that okay?" And of course they said, "Yeah, it's okay," because they knew him as his father, but not realizing that there was a court case against him, that he was an abuser, and because he was an abuser, that he had no rights to his kids. And so any church that I work with, I say, "Hey, what is your assimilation process when it comes to kids? What is your plan to protect the kids for something like this that happens?" So that way, one, it protects them that way. And then on the other side, there's another story that I want to share with you. There was a gentleman who was in leadership at a church, and he was an abuser, and he was a minister of the gospel, a pastor of the church, and working in youth ministry and children's ministry. And he had a 4-year relationship she was 12 years old when he started with her, 16 by the time they found out. So for 4 years, this leader was having sex and having a relationship with, and he was a sexual abuser, and nothing was placed in to help her that was in trouble. So because of that, it's been a real proponent for me to really make sure we have background checks. And if you put together, in leadership as a whole, you should have background checks, folks in leadership, but especially in children and youth ministry, because they're precious gift to us as one, and then we're supposed to be mandated reporters. So if we know of some sexual abuse or some abuse that we as leaders are supposed to be able to, we're supposed to call the police, call the child protective agencies, and make sure that the children are taken care of because they're in our care. Amen. So I decided to talk about this today because I didn't wait any longer because it's now a law. And so we need to make sure we're in place, churches are in place to be able to help their peeps. So let's do it. So let me show this slide. I got a new little system. So excuse me as I try to use it. That wasn't what I was trying to do. Let's switch to this scene. There we go. So as I stated earlier, now I can go forward and kind of read the law. And it's important for us to know in nonprofits, if you're working with youth and children, this affects you, not just churches, but all nonprofits. Also affects schools, academies, and after-school programs, boys and girls clubs, and it affects everybody that works with children and youth. So let's go. So as we see here, it says the new California legislation, sexual abuse prevention, and it comes about because of this legislation by Assembly Bill 506. It is AB 506, effective January 1st, 2022, but they had to put some things in place, and so now 2023, they're going to start penalizing people and start going for it, and they're going to start with, and the way they're going to do it, that if you got employees, it's going to start with employees, but then it's going to transfer over into basic folks that are nonprofits, that don't have employees, that have volunteers. It's going to affect them as well. But these requirements are for youth organizations as a whole. All right. And I'm just going to read it, and then we'll talk about it at the end, because it's important to me. So the new law is aimed at youth service organizations and outlines requirements related to training, background checks, and policies. At a glance, this appears to be a step in the right direction. Upon closer review, this new law creates difficulties likely unexpected to the drafters, which again, they wanted the law, they wanted to make sure it worked, but again, there's going to be challenges because they wanted it in place, but at the same time, they wanted to make sure that their folks can, that they were able to implement the law, and then at the same time, give grace to those that are of youth agencies to be able, nonprofits and churches, to be able to implement these things, get these procedures in place and what we're talking about today in place. Nevertheless, youth service organizations now have a legal standard of care related to sexual abuse risk management. AB 506 establishes a new standard of care through all youth, I should have put underline all, youth service organizations that have been required to take reasonable steps to address the known risk of child sexual abuse, that's anyone under 18, in the past. AB 506 provides standard of care, refinement, and definition. All youth service organizations in California should have an effective safety system currently in place, requiring, number one, training, number two, background checks, and number three, policies that referring to the AB 506 promulgates specific requirements related to each of these safety systems elements. Unfortunately, the attempt at refinement has created some confusion and difficulty. Who is impacted by AB AB 506, now AB, the second one should be down below. It says AB 506 creates a standard of care for youth service organizations in California. Who fits this description under the new law? Unfortunately, the new law is unclear. In fact, the definition is still somewhat circular. AB 506 defines the youth organization relying on paragraph 7 of the California Penal Code section 11165-7. That's what this anyway. Dash A in parentheses A, which provides a list of mandated reporters of child abuse and maltreatment. Paragraph 7 identifies the following persons, a mandated reporters in California. In paragraph 7 it says the administrator or employee of a public or private youth center, youth creation program, youth organization. That's what it belongs to. And it says new training required training. And I made this, I condensed it because it's really long. But I wanted to get you to understand that if you're a nonprofit and you're dealing with youth and children, that you need to come up with what we talked about earlier, so that way you're able to be in compliance, because you're not in compliance. You could be fined, or you could be shut down, or a combination of both, and put yourself in a bad position anyway. So let's keep going. Prior to this legislation, effective training should already be a component of a necessary safety system for organizations serving youth, which is absolutely right. This is what I mentioned earlier. AB 506 is making it happen, adds additional training topics through an indirect reference to an existing California training. The new law requires youth organizations to provide training to child abuse and neglect identification and reporting, because we are mandated as youth services, pastors, ministers, directors, and so forth. You are considered a mandated reporter. And so if you know of child abuse, if you know of child neglect, if you know of sexual abuse, then you are a mandated reporter, and you are required by law to report them. Don't put it's in God's hands, all in there. It's the law. And I'll get to that. I'll get to that today too. Though AB 506 does not provide specific guidance, list of topics, length of training delivered live or online, frequency of retraining, and requirement of a quiz or test or record keeping process, and so forth. It does note that organizations may utilize the mandated reporter training provided by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention in the State Department of the Social Services. And so that's something that I should have put the link for that. If not, let me know and I'll get you the link for there. So just hit me up below, or contact me. You got my contact information. If not, DM me and I'll get it to you. Though not required, the reference to the SDSS mandated reporter training provides some guidance concerning topics that should be covered, particularly related to reporting requirements. New background check requirements, like the training criminal background check requirements, aren't new to any discussion of sexual abuse risk in youth organizations, but we should be talking about it and doing it as well. Currently, the majority of youth organizations rely on third-party vendors to provide background checks and services, and so, which is the truth. And unfortunately, a lot of churches don't even do anything, which is sad. And as well as nonprofits, they just trust people blindly, which we shouldn't. We're in a world where, where there's wolf in sheep's clothing, trying to destroy, kill, steal, and destroy the children and youth, and with anything you try to do that's of good, they want to destroy it, because they understand the lack of us being diligent in making sure we have these things in place to help our children. Background checks providers offer a variety of search package parameters to gather and compile records, including municipal, county, state, federal, civil, and driving records. Youth service organizations can choose a background check provider based on pricing, online, ease of use, integration into existing software, or other factors. There are 5 areas that you should be looking to. One, of using a service, as well as you having ongoing training and services that you should be offering to your organization, the people that can be part of your organization. Number one, if you look at the very top left, it says sexual abuse awareness training. You should have ongoing training about that. Every new person that comes into your ministry or to your nonprofit should be going through some type of sexual awareness training and knowing what to look for, how to do it, how to report, where do you report, and what do you do. Skillful screening. So you got to have some, it's not this cheesy stuff that we kind of do, something that's more concrete, because if you notice in the news and news and TV, there have been a lot of folks getting in, hens in the hen house, getting in there, and molesting children and doing some pretty awful things. So you need to have some screening to make sure you have that protected. The next one, policies and procedures. That's a real big one for me. You'll hear me if you've been around me any length of time that I always talk about what kind of policies and procedures you have in place for such a thing as this, because we don't We need to have what do we do when we find somebody that's molesting somebody? What do we do if there's even a thought of impropriety? What do you do? What legally do you need to do? And then what spiritually you need to do if you're the church? And then what as a nonprofit, how do you protect the kids and the families that you're dealing with? You also check criminal background. Just because they've been exonerated, you know, you still, I mean, you want to give them a second chance, but they, at the same time, they may not be a part, they may not need to be a part of working actually with the kids, but they can work in the office or do other things. But if they have a criminal background that has to do with sexual abuse, then they should not, one, they shouldn't be a part because, again, why tempt them to sin or tempt them to fall again, right? And then monitoring and oversight are important as well. How do you monitor? How do you oversee? Again, oversee, making sure those procedures are in place so that way you know how to help a person. There's a company, and I have nothing to do with this organization, but it's just an organization that the church, Pilgrim Congregational Church here in Pomona are working with, and I wanted to make sure if you don't have an idea what to do, it's beyond my pay grade. I know, you know, I know the basics of how to do it. I can put together some basic policy and procedures, but the next company that I'm about to show you, they're called Ministry Safe, and their whole goal is to make sure ministries are what? Safe. That is their website, and that's their website. I didn't put the telephone number. Just go to the website. Yes, it's not free. It's a paid service, but it's something that you need. You can't afford not to do it, especially if you don't have anything in place, and especially because of this 50, the AB 506, that you are mandated to have these things in place. Don't get left behind. Don't put yourself out there where you can get towed up from the floor up. That you need to put these things in place. The new California legislation of the sexual abuse prevention. Make sure you have a plan in place. And that is the legislation right there. And I'm going to close with this, that you don't want to be put in the position, as other churches have, that you are not prepared and you don't have the things in place and you don't know what to do. And it's something that I've seen a lot. I've had to leave churches because they thought, well, God can handle it. No, it's our job. We are stewards over these people that come to our nonprofits, that come to our schools, that come to our churches, that come to our organizations. And it's our job to make sure we have things in place to protect them. If you need more information, I have a whole packet of stuff that I'll email to you. But go to the link that I showed you up on the screen. Let me put it back up there again, just so that way I'll put it up so that way you can write it down. It is ministrysafe.com, ministrysafe.com, ministrysafe.com. Reach out and touch them because they got great resources to help you. All right. Well, that's it for today. This is the Brian Cochran Show. I'll be doing more things like this that comes across my desk or comes across my email, actually, that I learned because I want to help businesses, nonprofits, and folks in life to get better and do better, and to have the resources to be able to help the community that they want to serve, as well as do what God has called them to do. Amen. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.